Artemis 1 is set. Finally, we're returning to the moon. This very hot summer of 2022 has brought us not only sleepless nights, but also a lovely and now unexpected piece of news at the end of August. We're on our way to the moon. When hope seemed to be fading, NASA gave us the Artemis 1 mission, the final go-ahead. Let us analyze Artemis 1 mission going to the moon. The Artemis program is the first real project aimed at returning humans to lunar soil and, more importantly, establishing a sustainable and long-term human presence there. This almost sounds like science fiction, but in reality it is more than doable, and the program, despite the chilling delays and issues, appears to have made up a lot of ground. Artemis is also the first project to include every type of aerospace entity, both private and commercial, all with the goal of not only conquering the moon for good, but also paving the way for Mars missions. We all know that getting to Mars is a much more difficult task than returning to our natural satellite. As a result, reclaiming the moon will be an excellent way to prepare for the long journey to Mars, a journey that, by the way, will be made using the same rocket vectors that are currently heating the engines for the moon. Small steps which may become giant leaps for humanity, as happened in the past with Apollo, and for the time being, we must make ourselves sufficient, but the roadmap is long and full of steps, and it is worth analyzing it more closely. By the time the Space Launch System lifts off the Launch Complex 39B at Kennedy Space Center. Since the return to Earth of Apollo 17, the sixth and final mission to explore the lunar soil on December 19, 1972, exactly 18,150 days have passed. We erroneously assumed at the time that, having taken the initial step, we would soon return to the moon and inhabited it. Exactly 50 years have gone by, and we have never touched the moon since. Except for autonomous probes, we have never even reached its orbit. After years of problems, delays, and trials of many types, Artemis 1, the first of 3 missions that will return more men and women to the regolith of our satellite by 2025, will finally be launched. The exact date should be next August 29th or a little later, but we are confident that we are nearing the end. The expedition that appears to be destined to open the door to human exploration of the solar system will soon begin. It will be the first flight of both the Orion spacecraft and the Space Launch System, as well as the first mission of the Artemis program. Do you concur? The journey to the moon is, without a doubt, the most dangerous journey ever undertaken by a human person, and it's astounding to consider how the astronauts of the Apollo period managed to survive aboard spacecraft with computers the size of an old cell phone. Despite the technological restrictions of the time, those individuals were able to demonstrate the feasibility of a journey that many thought was impossible. Today, with Artemis 1, we are prepared to undertake this extraordinary crossing again, with an initial launch that will serve only to demonstrate the launcher's ability to go to and from the moon safely, even putting small CubeSats into lunar orbit for research objectives. It will also be critical to evaluate the behavior of the new Orion Command Module, one of the program's flagships, which offers tremendous autonomy and structural integrity, as well as the ability to safeguard the lives of its passengers even in emergencies. It is intended to transport 4 astronauts at a time in critical conditions to a safe landing. The European Space Agency, on the other hand, designed the service module, which will provide propulsion, electrical power, temperature control, and life support to the crew module. Because these assets must be tested again, there will be no astronauts aboard Artemis 1. As a result, the capsule's life support displays and control equipment have been removed. Sensors and specific instruments on board can detect every characteristic inside the capsule, including radiation levels, pressures, and temperatures. There will, however, be dummies on which sensors will be installed to monitor all of the radiation levels they will encounter. The name Commander Munikin Campos was chosen to honor the famed engineer of the Apollo 13 mission, who played a critical part in safely returning astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Haise to Earth. The lunar landing was not only thwarted by an explosion in the service module, but it also put a strain on the easy re-entry. Moonkin Campos will wear the same spacesuit as the astronauts and will be outfitted with an array of sensors capable of measuring a variety of important parameters, such as acceleration values at various stages of the journey and vibrations to which crew members will be subjected to radiation levels. Campos will be accompanied by Zolga and Helga, two human torsos comparable to those used in ballistic trauma simulations. The mission is expected to last roughly a month and a half, although the exact number of days will be determined by the launch date. The launch is scheduled for August 2022. The 2-hour launch window begins at 12:33 UT, and the mission will last 42 days. Alternatively, a launch date of September 2nd, starting at 16:48 UT, with a 2-hour launch window, and the mission will last 39 days. The last arranged date for Orion's splashdown launch will take place on September 5th, with a 90-minute launch window beginning at 21:12 UT. The mission will last 42 days. If it is unable to launch by these deadlines, the next viable opportunity will not open until late September. Some may wonder, why not simply try the next day again? The truth is that if Artemis were to be launched on August the 30th or any other day other than these chosen days, the Orion spacecraft would be traveling in Earth's shadow. This would prevent its solar panels from providing power and keeping it operational. Only by departing on the specified days will Orion be able to fly in direct sunlight. The Space Launch System rocket is designed for missions delivering humans or cargo to the moon and beyond, and it will generate 4 million kilograms of thrust during liftoff and ascent to carry a 2,700-ton ship into orbit, powered by 2 boosters and 4 engines. Within 90 seconds, the rockets will reach its full thrust. The main stage engines will shut down once the rocket's service module panels and launch abort systems are thrown aboard, and the main stage will separate from the spacecraft, which includes the Orion capsule. The European Space Agency supplied service module and interim cryogenic propulsion stages the rocket's second stage. The ESA module is installed beneath the capsule and will travel with it to and from the moon. This module will be undocked only before Orion returns to Earth. Inside, it consists of the capsule's primary engines, gas and propellant tanks, and a variety of secondary engines. The Orion capsule, along with the second stage and the ESA module, will be launched into a parking orbit at an altitude of about 200 kilometers by the Space Launch System. The maneuver is known as transfer lunar injection, and it will direct the spacecraft towards the moon. This will be one of the mission's most critical phases. The precise timing of engine firing is critical for intercepting the moon as it orbits the Earth. This allows the spacecraft to enter the lunar gravitational sphere of influence, an area of space where our satellite's attraction is stronger than that of Earth. A few minutes delay or advance in the maneuver can cause a trajectory error, causing the spacecraft to miss the lunar gravitational sphere and be lost beyond our satellite's orbit. Taking into account lunar motions, the third stage will be dropped, and the transfer lunar orbit phase of the journey will begin, bringing the capsule within 3 days of our satellite. The engine will then be restarted to slow the spacecraft down and place it in circumlunar orbit. This is known as lunar orbit insertion. After circumnavigating, our spacecraft will enter a peculiar orbit known as the distant retrograde orbit, while releasing the 10 CubeSat satellites that represent secondary science. This hitherto unknown orbit has been discovered to be exceptionally stable. This station will assist all Artemis missions, beginning with Artemis 4, as well as future missions to the Moon and subsequently Mars. The existence of the lunar station will fundamentally alter the approach to landings used during the Apollo period. Back in that time, the Apollo astronaut spacecraft could carry significantly more propellant than the Orion. As a result, the engines generated more thrust, allowing the lunar orbit insertion maneuver to enter a very low lunar orbit from which to commence descent efforts directly. Instead, the Artemis program strategy will be to dock the Orion with the gateway in the considerably higher orbit and then descend to the surface. The orbital form will send Orion 60,000 kilometers away from the Moon using a specialized vehicle provided by SpaceX. As a result, they broke the distance record set by Apollo 13 in 1970. After 6 days, the Orion capsule will exit the distant retrograde orbit with another lunar flyby, bringing it back to Earth. After a 3-day voyage near Earth, the Orion will drop the service module and plunge into our planet's atmosphere at 11 kilometers per second. After nearly 6 weeks and a total distance of more than 3 million kilometers traveled, the mission will come to an end with a splashdown off the coast of Baja, California, Mexico. Will everything go as planned? Of course it will, and it will begin as soon as Commander Munikin Campos emerges safely from the capsule. We'll start counting down the months until the launch of Artemis 2, the mission that will take men around the Moon for the first time since 1972, a mission that is strikingly similar to Apollo 8's incredible feat of Christmas 1968.